Third Saturday of the college football season is here. I've got three complimentary plays coming your way in just a moment. A couple on the nighttime card, Texas USC, plus that little game between Clemson and Louisville, and one as well on the South Carolina-Kentucky game. Can you imagine? The Wildcats have actually won 3 straight against the Gamecocks in that series. Plus, going to break down that little fight in Las Vegas. Yes, a real fight. Not a phony fight, not a money grab fight like that spectacle we had a few weeks ago, but the real fight. Yes, I'll break that one down between Alvarez and Golovkin in just a moment. I've won out DeMarco here. This is going to be your Saturday video report coming off that free win last night on South Florida against Illinois. Let's keep the momentum going, and let's talk about Southern Cal and Texas. You, of course, remember the last time these two met in that memorable national championship game in 2005. Vince Young had the Trojans number that night. Well, let's just say USC is going to get revenge, and they're going to get it big time here tonight. I just don't see how Texas competes here. Texas gave up 51 points a couple of weeks ago at home to Maryland. 51 points to Maryland. I don't know. Maybe Southern Cal scores 61 points here tonight. Southern Cal opened with a kind of a lackluster performance, 49-31 against Western Michigan. But they still put 49 points on the board. Then they played a better game, struggled a little bit defensively, but still played a much better game against Stanford last week at home. But the quality of competition was much better because the Cardinal was the opponent. And they won that game 42-24. And the offense started to get rolling to the tune of 623 yards. Again, let me just remind you, Texas gave up 51 points at home to Maryland. And you remember Tom Herman with his Pixie Ducks statement, which was so accurate. Because, as I noted and alluded to in a couple of days ago's video report, that Urban Meyer can say whatever he wants, but Tom Herman was absolutely accurate in his assessment. He wasn't coming down on the Texas Longhorn players. He was coming down on the program itself. Because during Charlie Strong's tenure, Texas wasn't out there recruiting 5-star or 4-star recruits nonstop. It was a cupboard that was kind of left barren with a bunch of 3-stars sprinkled with a few 4-stars. And the Texas Longhorns weren't able to stop anybody defensively last year. Remember, this is a team that ended the season losing at Kansas, and you gave up 51 points at home in your opener against Maryland. Oh, yeah, you rebounded and you beat San Jose State 56-0. Big deal. Now you're going on the road. You're at the Coliseum. You're taking on a Southern Cal team that can beat you on the ground, beat you through the air, and Southern Cal is certainly motivated. This is a Southern Cal team that's on a 25-12 ATS run as a home chalk, and Texas in a 2-8 ATS slump in true road games. You know what? Those are just numbers. Again, the only number that matters is Texas gave up 51 points at home against Maryland. Go with Southern Cal, lay the 15.5 points. Obviously, Texas is going to come out here and try to control the tempo of the game because for the Longhorns to be successful, their best defense is going to be an offense that keeps Southern Cal watching from the sidelines. So the Longhorns are going to come out here and try to establish the run. And they've got a good running back in Chris Warren, who ran for 166 yards against San Jose State last week. And Southern Cal's run defense is certainly spotty. But this is not San Jose State that Chris Warren is going to be running against here tonight. Again, go with Southern Cal and lay the points. Now, let's talk about this game between Clemson and Louisville. You've got the defending Heisman winner against the defending national champions. And listen, Louisville's offense is Lamar Jackson. That is basically it. There's not a hell of a lot more. But then again, when you got Lamar Jackson, that's not a bad starting point. And you've got Louisville playing at home in triple revenge. These two teams have met each of the past 3 years, and Clemson has won all 3 games, but they've been tightly contested contests. And Lamar Jackson is off to a hell of a start, completing 65% of his passes for 771 yards and 5 touchdowns. And he's run for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. But, of course, he's playing a heck of a Clemson defense. And you saw how Clemson just put the clamps on Auburn last week and how they just terrorized Auburn's offensive line with those 11 sacks. Pretty damn impressive. But the Tigers are on the road. And the jury is still out on this Clemson offense. This is not Deshaun Watson playing quarterback. And this is certainly a Clemson offense that doesn't have the quick strike potential or the offensive potential that has had the past couple of years when Deshaun Watson was running the show. Now, the Cardinals, remember last year, fell behind early and then rallied to take a 36-28 lead with 7:52 to play before Watson guided the Tigers to 2 scores late to win that game 42-36. Well, do you remember last year Clemson had a pretty damn good defense as well? Now, this year's edition may be better, but Clemson on the road. And I'll tell you what, guys, I think that Louisville pulls off the upset here as the 3-point dog. And naturally with this line, you know what I'm about to say. If this line crosses 3, 4, 7, and sometimes 10, I'm always buying the half point. So I'm buying up the half point in this particular case. If this line is anywhere from 2.5, 3, 3.5, even 4, I'm buying up the half point in this case on Louisville. And I think Louisville pulls off the upset in this particular spot and snaps Clemson's 10-game winning streak straight up on the highway in this particular spot. Do I like this game as much as I like USC? No. USC is by far the best of the complimentary plays I'm going to give you here today, but I do like Louisville to win the game outright. Now, your third complimentary play today, I misspoke at the outset of this report. I originally was going to give you the contest between South Carolina and Kentucky, but this is a live video report as I'm recording it here. And the more I thought about it here at the outset of this report, I thought, what do I want to really talk about South Carolina and Kentucky? South Carolina in triple revenge. Kentucky, you never know what you're going to get. The more I thought about this game, instead, let's skip that. I was leaning towards South Carolina, but South Carolina's offense really underwhelming. South Carolina's defense, underwhelming as well. Instead, let's shift gears here and let's talk about the game between Duke and Baylor. Because when you talk about underwhelming, you have to underline that word 3, maybe 7, maybe 22 times, and that would be Baylor, the first 2 games of the season. Listen, did anybody expect the Bears to do well this season anyway? But did anyone really expect the Bears to lose their first 2 games this season in Matt Rule's debut in Waco? Oh my gosh, you lose to Liberty as a 33-point favorite, 48-45. That was bad enough. And then you think things couldn't get any worse, and then University of Texas San Antonio comes to town as an 11-point chalk, and you lose that game 17-10. Now, the good thing is the Bears' defense played a little better. The bad thing is they still lost the game, and now they find themselves on the road taking on Duke. David Cutcliffe's team only won 4 games last year, but they're off to a 2-0 start. They beat up a little sister of the poor, NC Central, 60-7 in their home opener. But then Northwestern comes to town, and they shellacked the Wildcats 41-7 in that game. I mean, they held Northwestern, a decent team, to 191 total yards. They forced 3 turnovers. Their offense had 538 yards. You know, the key to Duke is their quarterback. I think he's a sophomore, Daniel Jones, a threat to run the ball and throw the ball. Had 305 passing yards against Northwestern, 2 touchdowns, also ran for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. He's completed 68.6% of his passes through 2 games already. You know, the defense rose to the occasion against Northwestern as well, only gave up 22 rushing yards. Now you got a Baylor defense that comes in here, and, you know, they're allowing through 2 games almost 74% completions. They've allowed 602 passing yards in those first 2 games. Baylor switching quarterbacks. They're going to Zach Smith because Solomon, the transfer from Arizona State, is out with concussion. Now, Zach Smith did start 4 games last year. Baylor lost the first 3 of them, but then he did guide them with a pretty decent performance in the Cactus Bowl against Boise State. He has the stronger arm. He's less mobile, and Baylor's offensive line certainly hasn't given much in terms of protection or opening any holes for what was expected to be a decent ground game. It's a big number with Duke 14.5 points, and it's not like it's going to be a huge crowd here, I don't think, for Duke. They only drew like 20,000 fans for the game against Northwestern. But again, until Baylor shows me anything, I'd rather go with Duke as opposed to laying 5.5 points with South Carolina against Kentucky in triple revenge, because the more I think about that game, that could be a field goal game. And I'm sorry, you know, even grabbing Kentucky plus the points, that doesn't enthuse me much. So your 3 complimentary plays in order: love USC, like a lot, don't love, but like a lot, Clemson, and going with Duke as your third and final complimentary play. Now, let's talk about the Alvarez Triple G fight here tonight. Again, this is a real fight, not a phony fight like that one a few weeks ago. And the way I would bet it, I would take Alvarez plus the $1.30. If I was to go back in history, and I covered boxing for a number of years as a reporter, I would say this fight most reminds me of another middleweight fight, and that was Hagler and Hearns. You have Hagler comparing to Triple G, the bigger, more physical, more intimidating fighter, the power fighter, although Triple G has more power than Hagler did at any stage of his career, against the slightly younger Leonard was compared to Hagler. Here you have Alvarez, the much younger fighter, the more elusive fighter, and the quicker fighter in Alvarez. You look at these two guys, and you look at Triple G here lately, 23 straight knockouts before his most recent bout against David Jacobs. And that's the only time he's gone 12 rounds in his career, in that most recent bout against Daniel Jacobs, not David, Daniel Jacobs. 37 wins by KO. So, that's his MO, the KO. He comes at you with those heavy-handed punches, with that hammering jab. Listen, in the Jacobs fight, he threw 356 jabs compared to 176 to Jacobs. He landed 105 of those 356 jabs. Jacobs only landed 31. And then he uses that jab to set up to those heavy body shots that he goes. And, he's got a great hook as well. So, it's all about power with Triple G. Now, Alvarez, of course, it's a guy who is more experienced. Remember, this is a guy who started fighting pro at 15 years old. He has fought better competition in terms of names, Cotto, Mayweather, Mosley. This guy's had 51 pro fights. He's gone the distance, 12 rounds, 10 times. When I look at Triple G, I look at that last fight against Jacobs, and he did not look good in that fight. Was it age? Did he start to slow down at the age of 34, 35 now? You're going against a younger guy here, 27. I look at the timing of this fight. If this fight, which everybody wanted as long as 2 years ago, had been made 18 months, 24 months ago, would have probably been a huge mismatch. I probably would have been on Triple G at that point. But Alvarez has matured and grown into this middleweight limit of 160. Having fought previously junior middleweight, light middleweight, started as a welterweight, etc. Some guys mature into these middleweight classes, that when they go from that welterweight up to eventually middleweight. Some guys balloon into this middleweight class because they get lazy, they get fat, they just don't look, they look puffy, they look bloated. If you looked at the weigh-in, you looked at Alvarez and he was chiseled, he was ripped, and he looked like a true middleweight. Again, he looked like he matured, and he's physically at this stage of his life at 27 years old. He's a true middleweight. If this fight had been made a couple of years ago, I don't know at that point if I would be that enthralled with taking him. The one thing no boxer can fight is father time. And there's an erosion of skills. I don't care who you are. And you've got Triple G here at 34, 35. He's going to be the aggressor. He's going to stalk Alvarez. But you've got Alvarez, who's a great counterpuncher. So when that jab is coming in, when that aggressor is coming at you, he's going to slip those punches. He's going to be able to counterpunch, especially from inside. And, a lot about this fight is going to come down to how it's going to be scored. Now, we know Triple G has a great chin. He's not going to be knocked out. We know Alvarez has a good chin as well. So I think this fight is going to go the distance. And again, it's going to come down to how a fight is scored. And again, I go back to how Hagler and Leonard was. I scored that fight. And I've told this story before. I scored that fight. I was doing the play-by-play for that fight and sending it out for a major wire service. And the minute that fight was done, I said that Leonard was the winner of the fight. And within seconds, ESPN was on the line going, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And it's like, I just watched the damn fight. I just did the round-by-round coverage. I just reported on it. Of course I'm sure. It's a 50-50 proposition. What do you think? Because a number of other organizations were reporting Hagler was the winner. Well, I was right because, again, the way I scored the fight was based on the way that I felt that the judges and the officials were going to score the fight based on the way that Leonard accumulated the points. Every person judges a fight differently. I can't tell you what the judges and the officials and the guys are going to judge the fight here tonight, but I think that Alvarez, by virtue of being a good counterpuncher, by willing to mix it up occasionally, but staying to the outside and being smart enough not to wade in and absorb too many of those heavy-handed punches, will be smart enough and go the distance, and that's how I think this fight is going to go. And that's the way I would bet the fight tonight. Taking the plus $1.30 in this fight. Hey, listen, if I had to rate this play like a football selection, I would make it a 15-dime best bet. And that's the way I would do it. So again, I think I would go with Alvarez, who's the better boxer, a strong counterpuncher. Look for this fight to go distance. I don't think there's going to be any knockdowns. And that's the way I'm going with that one tonight. And again, the top complimentary play in football is going to be the USC Trojans, followed by Louisville to upset Clemson, and then your early game between Duke and Baylor. I'm going with the Blue Devils minus the double digits. That'll do it, and wish you well, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.